of the most exciting times in the life of an orthodontist is graduating and then going on and finding your next opportunity to where are you going to work? Is it going to be what type of setting? Private practice? Is it going to be with a big partnership or potentially an OSO? For so many different residents out there, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's unique into what each wants, what your long-term goals are, and what your short-term goals are. Today, we're going to hear about the journey of Dr. Matt Roche. He joins us with a very unique background, with orthodontics being almost a second career for him. His first was in the field of customer service. He didn't know what he wanted to do. I'm excited for you to hear about his journey to land with such an exciting field, the best field in the world of orthodontics, where we get to love patients, serve them, and watch them change and watch them grow. Matt joined Smile Doctors in 2022. He's in Columbus, Georgia, and joined a team that had years of experience. I'm excited for you to hear how he decided to come in, bring a culture of his own, and really grow that location, growing with the patients, growing with the team, using his unique leadership skills. So we welcome Dr. Matt Roche to the Smile Doctors Off Mute podcast. Welcome to the show, Matt. Dr. Roche, you've been with us now for about how many months?
What are we at now? 12 plus 5, 17 months?
Okay.
We'll call it 17 months.
Very cool. Very cool. Tell us a little bit about how did you get into orthodontics? What was your journey?
I went and worked at customer service for a car insurance company. I was a customer service representative. And so I would take about 80 or 90 phone calls a day from people who couldn't figure out how to modify their auto insurance policy using something called the internet. So those were some good times. That was enough to scare me into the professions. My dad is a physician. My brother's a physician. I knew I didn't want to be a physician, but I quit that job and they asked me, what are you going to do next? And I said, I have no idea. But I'm the type of guy who can't figure that out until I know that there's nothing else to do. So I sort of lit a fire under myself, burnt all my bridges, and quit my job. Went to a career advisor, and he said, "Your dad's a doctor. What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to work with my hands. I want to see the change I'm having, the impact I'm having on people." And he said, "You should go shadow a dentist." And the next thing I knew, I was shadowing a dentist and then shadowing an orthodontist, and just fell madly in love with kind of the city planner thing, the long-term relationships you get to form with patients. It's such a fun age group. I think in another life, I probably would have been like a middle school science teacher or something. And it just brings all of that together and allows me to have so much fun.
Oh, that is awesome. I bet you had some stories to tell working the phones in a call center.
The fun part is, I think, and here I sit in front of my microphone, I'm told that I have kind of one of those like weather voices or like radio voices, you know? And so occasionally you'd get like a really disgruntled policyholder on the phone, and it's a recording that they're mashing the button to try to get to a real person. And by the time I come on the line, I say, "Hi, thanks for calling us. This is Matt Roche, and I'm happy to help you today. Can I get started with your policy number, please?" And the guy's just screaming, "Real person!" And so then I get to say, "Actually, I am a real person, sir. I just use this voice to make you even more frustrated." So, yeah, it was a lot. It was high stress, and it ended up teaching me a lot about defusing bombs. Really, I mean, just like, and that is just priceless experience. At the time, I think a lot of times when you're going through something stressful, it's easy to think that you're not growing. You know, the last thing you want to do is like internalize it as a good thing. But what's funny is, hindsight being 2020, it's like, wow, it is so easy to deal with angry moms, angry patients. You know, it's just like, because of how many difficult conversations I've had.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you learned conflict resolution like a champ through those many conversations.
And early on, yeah, it was really good for me, I think, to have a really bad job before dental school. I don't think I took school very seriously until I worked 40 hours a week and had a stressful job.
I totally agree. I think those docs who come to work for us, who've been previously employed in something hard, whether it's dentistry, being a general dentist, not easy, or something like yourself. They come with a different outlook and
for
different
sure.
experience.
There was a guy at our residency program that didn't want to bring anybody on who hadn't been a dentist before. But actually, I think it was funny because he didn't like the guys fresh out of dental school, and I was one of those guys because I did go, but dentistry was kind of in that sense a second career for me. And you met Joe Vaughn
Sure.
last weekend at AAO. And we were
did.
just attached at the hip all week. And
Did.
he's such a nice guy. I love that guy. And he was my big in residency. That's how we got to know each other. But he used to work in an oil field, and he would look over at me in the middle of a stressful day at residency, and he'd go, "Man, isn't this awesome? Isn't this great? Isn't it great to be an orthodontist instead of being out at the call center or in the oil fields?" It was like we got a good thing here. Orthodontics is nice.
Yeah. I had one of my uncles said, I want a doctor who's pumped gas. Like I want somebody who's pragmatic, who understands me, Yeah. So it's funny. Yeah. So being myself, a carpet cleaner and carpet installer. Yeah. I've been on that end of the dirty job. So yeah, it's great. So you and I got to kick it off. We met, really hung out for the first time at our doctor meeting a couple weeks ago, and I was just so thoroughly impressed with your outlook on everything and the practice that you're in and what you've done coming in as an associate doctor. So I just wanted to have you on the podcast as a help to anybody who might be considering what their future might look like from the different career options that they have, and I welcome your experience. And so tell me a little bit about, so you got into ortho, you're looking at your future of, you're going to graduate soon. What were your options? What were you considering? And what made you look
I think I had
OSO
probably
like
too many
Smile
eggs in one basket. I think there's probably a lot of people out there that resonates with that. You'd hear these stories when people would come back and talk, make sure to weigh out your options. And I was just so convinced that really the guy who made me want to be an orthodontist, that first guy that I shadowed, is a phenomenal practitioner. And my idea was like, well, he's going to be getting older and I'm going to slide right in there. We'll sort of do the trade model, and I'll slowly take over his practice in my hometown and life will be perfect. What do they say? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So probably 2 weeks before graduation. No, I'm exaggerating, but I think probably 6 months before graduation, it was kind of like, okay, let's start talking numbers. And it very quickly became apparent that the practice simply couldn't afford to support 2 doctors. And I was offered an amount less than 6 digits to be an orthodontist. And so no sense in lambasting that man. He will always be the person who wanted me to be an orthodontist, but it was immediately clear that financially it wasn't a fit. And here I had just spent the last 5 years just kind of assuming that was my setup, that was my next move. So I kind of had to scramble. But I had seen you talk. You came and talked to us at Seton Hill. And I sort of thought, these guys have got jobs everywhere. Why don't I just give them a call? And so I got in touch with Kelly, who may not be Kelly Gilmore anymore. Shout out to Kelly Gilmore. She told me at the AAO that she just recently married. So congratulations. But anyways, I reached out to her and said, hey, I'd really at least love to be back in Georgia. And she made it happen and introduced me to this team. And we went out to a lunch at a Mexican restaurant together and just had this awkward, like 14-person table. And it was clearly apparent, like, wow, this... I was like, you saw this practice. It's like walking in on the Millennium Falcon. You pull the dust covered cloth off, and you're like, oh yeah, this can hum. Like, oh, we can turn this into something. This place just needs a doctor.
That's right.
It's just been a wild ride. It's been phenomenal.
That's right. I can only imagine how that lunch went because I know that team. I know that team pretty well.
Yeah,
and I've been there. I've worked that practice, and I could tell they were interviewing you hard as much as you were interviewing them.
We keep it real.
Yeah, they want
cards face up out here in Columbus, and everyone does. And it's funny because whether it's the area that we're in or the demographic that we're serving, it resonates really well with patients. Like you said, you kind of want a pragmatic doctor. I think the entire team is just focused on rubber meets the road orthodontics. How do we help everybody? We're all on the same team here. It's easy to get combative or feel like that your patient or their family is your obstacle or that you're a victim. And it's so easy to just kind of talk yourself into that corner. And you have to immediately get out of it and just think, what's best for everybody? What's the most pragmatic thing to do here?
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed. We talk a lot about that, about like the paternalistic mindset that the patient, the team, it's all there to serve me, the doctor, the mighty doctor. When in reality, it's like, no, we've actually been given this position of man, blessed with so much that, we're much is given, much is required. And we can bless the lives of so many people just with our influence and as well as our
and it's
skill.
funny how that it happens in tiers, right? It's sort of like in the same sense that Smile Doctors really wants to kind of get out of my way and let us grow and support. I need to get out of the way of my clinicians and let them grow and be there to support them. And I need to, sometimes you put that bracket on that upper right 5 the second it comes into the mouth and you just hang it up there. It's never going to reach the occlusal plane. Baby, we got a bracket on that bad boy. You're like, get out of the way. Get out of the way. If you can ever get out of the way, do it. Things are going to go well by you stepping aside, step aside,
Yeah. It's kind of like how I raise my kids with the proper amount of neglect.
The German model.
Let them get outside. Get dirty a little bit, and be a kid, be safe in this little space here, but go explore. And it's funny. Anyway, so you talked to Kelly and she told you all about Smile Doctors. I'd love to hear, did we live up to what she sold you? Where have we done well? Where have we messed up?
I think I am just phenomenally surprised. I think for some of my background and for anybody who has known me for years and is going to watch me give this interview, I don't have flags. I'm not a big fan of institutions or organizations. I'm not a company guy, I tried for the military scholarship before dental school and some people started laughing at me like, please, Matt, please don't do military. I'm not a military guy. I don't respond well. Right. So what's funny is I think I just sort of assumed this was going to be a nightmare and whether that was a good thing and then you can only go up from there. Or whether that prepared me. I would say I thought that this was going to be tough and I was right about that. But I wasn't ready for just how many people were going to be on my team and just how much, you talk a lot about delegating, just how much delegating I was going to be able to do. I think everybody's experience is going to be unique, and I do want us to touch on that. But I would say that I've had a phenomenal experience. And I would, if you told me a year ago that I was going to be talking with Scott Law on his podcast about how to be a successful associate and happily doing so, right? It's sounding like a patriot for Smile Doctors. I would not have believed you. Cause I just assumed, right, that this was going to be awful. But instead, like we talked about, that leadership model of vulnerability and honesty and transparency and just saying, we're all just trying to grow here, man. We're all just on the same team. And the kinds of the kinds of partners, that are in this organization. I just have so many role models that are my partners. It's like, I don't have to just go see you at the AAO and then fly back home and continue competing with you, or something like that. It's like that's my partner. You know how much fun it is to sit at that doctor's meeting and watch like Amanda Gallagher talk about how to brand a practice, and think, yes, that's not my competition. That's my partner, that I'm on that team, that feels good.
And you can call her up. Yeah. You can call her up anytime, get all the secrets. Yeah. So it's beautiful.
It's a scary amount of approachability too. It's like every single person, like your buddy, Josh Adcock, sat down next to me at the doctor's meeting, immediately shook my hand and said, what can I do? So it's like, as if they work for me, which is just a wild thing to think about. The level of support and the size, the sheer mass of the number of people that can help you. Shout out to Dan Bills, gave an awesome talk on clinical efficiency. we've got Dan Bills helping me adjust my wire sequence and just try to shorten the number of appointments it takes to treat a comprehensive case, because he obsesses over that and he's kind of an educator already. And so to put him in a room full of young partners who are going to help his practice grow and improve his success, it's just a no-brainer. It's good for me. It's good for him.
Agreed. Yeah, he spoke. So when we had our doctor meeting a couple weeks ago, he was on the new doctor track. Yeah, so we tried to tailor we tried to get some of the best people that we could in front of new doctors. I asked myself, if I was a brand new doctor, what would I want to hear, and who would I want in front of me, just pouring advice in for my first few years of practice? And yeah, Dr. Bills was one of those, just incredible and incredibly humble, just awesome people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just
so you took a great approach when you joined the practice that you're in, and recognized that you didn't have years and years of ortho experience, but your team did.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to me about. I was fascinated when you and I were talking that your approach was so unique, and it's why you're so successful.
It comes back to the unique situation, right? I think it's hard for me to say what's the cookie cutter approach to being a successful associate at Smile Doctors, because I really like when Jay, our CEO, says, if you've seen one Smile Doctors practice, you've seen one Smile Doctors practice. And so I saw one Smile Doctors practice. But my practice director has been here for over 25 years. One of my two TCs has been here for over 25 years, and my clinical lead has been here for over 25 years. Getting back to that part about getting out of somebody's way, it's just sort of like, I told you at the doctor's meeting, I feel like I was drafted onto an NFL team. Like, okay, you're the quarterback, but don't worry, because you're not going to get tackled. You're going to have about 14 seconds to throw the ball, and all of your wide receivers are faster than everyone else. So it's just like, throw the ball, kid, just throw the ball. And everybody has just made it so easy for me to practice orthodontist chops instead of business owner chops, or what sort of parts should we be ordering here? Can I use a dollar distalizer instead of a motion appliance? I don't have to think about those things. I'm too busy practicing orthodontics.
That is beautiful, beautiful. Any instances where you got stuck and your team bailed you out?
Oh, how much time do we have? Every day. So many times. And I think I have a lack of appreciation for it, because it actually, when you're a resident, you're kind of just like king of this little kingdom, I'm seeing all of my patients every 6 weeks, and I know their parents, and I know my patients, and it's small enough that you can just be a micromanager. And so, for example, I find myself, there'll be emails. What we do is we get emails from the patient support center, and they go to whoever needs to see them in order to resolve the patient's issue in as timely a fashion as possible, if they can't be directed to our office immediately. And I'll see them on like my clinical lead's desk, and I'll start to read one, and she'll be like, I've already handled it. So it's like, what am I doing? It's like, again, get out of the way. So I think the number of times that parents or patients ask questions in a practice as big as mine or as busy as mine goes completely unappreciated by me. And then it took me a few months to actually realize that I'm just surrounded by mattresses. I'm just so well insulated by this phenomenally talented team that I don't necessarily have to deal with too much business management. Or by the time a concern reaches me, it's pretty easy to come to a resolution and figure it out.
That's just, your approach is commendable, and it took me years to learn that. And so you coming right out, automatically implementing that and respecting that with your team, and great job, great job. Along those lines, so what other piece of advice do you have for any associate in anywhere coming out of school? What are some things that they should do their first year or two coming out of school?
Yeah. So like I said, I think it's definitely, going to depend on where you end up. If you end up at a different Smile Doctor's office, then you're in a different Smile Doctor's office. I don't think that people should vet opportunities based on whether they're corporate or partner, or, you need to look at the entire environment. And we can talk more about selecting your job later. But what I would say about like advice in general coming out, especially into an associate environment, shout out to David Mayberry in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, told us once, if I hire you as an associate, what exactly is it you're going to do for me? It was just sort of like, just think from the perspective of the person who actually owns the business that you're going to go work for. What would they like you to do? And what are you doing for them? And I guess what that question brought to me was a sense of what what is my role here? What am I to do and what am I not to do? And I think that the sooner that you kind of just fill the shape of your container, step into those shoes, try to be the person that you need to be in order to make your team succeed and meet your patients where they're at and meet your team where they're at, the better things are going to go. And for me, that was relatively easy because of the veteran status of a lot of my core team members. But in general, I would also say, we had a good friend of mine, Joey Rodriguez, come back to our program a year into his associate job. And you go back to your residency and everybody's like, yeah, Billy, how's high school? You know, just like the Billy Madison thing or something. And he's like, guys, you know, I'm seeing 90
as long as you
can. You know, you're going to go from seeing 4 patients a day to seeing 94 patients a day. So I think what he said was so poetic. He said, it's not the volume of the cases and it's not the complexity of the cases. It's the volume of complex cases. Just get ready. You know, I meet a surgery patient every week. I didn't have any surgery patients in residency, but I meet one a week now. And so I've immediately had to find the surgeons who know what they're doing in this area, you know, or reach out to my partners and say, what do I do? What do I do here? So I think the volume of complex cases is going to feel very burdensome, and I would just be ready to be stressed out. You want my best Greg Goggins impersonation is you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay, got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. He loves to say that, and he's right. He's absolutely right. Like, is this comfortable? Do I love this? If your first year of your career is not your worst year of your career, something's wrong, right? It's like, do you want to trend downward? So where are you planning on this being easy? And so in that sense, I think you need to prepare your emotional safety nets. You know, if you're dragging a spouse and kids across the country, they're about to become the most important thing to you. You're going to find your why, right? You're going to figure out what it is you're doing that makes all this worth it, because this job is not easy. Whether you go into private practice or a partnership or associateship, it's not going to be easy. And therefore, you need to know immediately why you're doing it, because not every day is going to feel like, yeah, I love my job. You know, it's not easy to be patriotic every single day.
Sure. No, there are those tough days, and some decisions make them way tougher. I guess along the same lines of that question, what are things what would you advise that people not do in their first year or two?
I think punching in and punching out, you know, is the first thing I asked my team not to do. I gave like a really great new quarterback speech when I hit the clinic floor on my very first day, and these guys are looking at, I'm like still wet behind the ears, and they're looking at me like, oh gosh, this could go one way or another. And I said to them that I love teaching people orthodontic concepts. You're going to watch me teach orthodontic concepts to parents, to patients. I just think out loud. That's just the type of person that I am. And so I can teach any member on our team how to do anything that I'm ever going to ask them to do. And I'm never going to embarrass them in front of a patient or a parent. I'm never going to make that about patronizing them. But I can't care for them. The only thing I can't do for you is make you care. And if I don't care, oh man, you know that feeling of walking into an office where nobody cares. And so one thing I like to say a lot is the more you act like McDonald's, the more you get treated like McDonald's. And no offense to McDonald's, but you've been in those locations where the manager cares and the staff cares, right? And sometimes if you're a little too corporate, you can get into a position where you just think this is corporate.
There's no soul to it. Yeah, there's
absolutely with a lack of character and a lack of concern. And it takes a while to create the impression on the part of your team and on the part of your patients and parents that you're not punching in, you know, you're not just like, well, I'm just showing up for my per diem, paying off my student loans, getting out of here, you know, stepping stone in my career. Even if it's a stepping stone in your career, I would think like, so you don't want to like practice caring about patients and parents, you know, it's hard to imagine why somebody would do it. And I think it's so much more miserable when you act like a passenger in any situation, right? So like my general advice is buy-in.
Yep, I agree with you. I've heard so many patients or so many doctors say this, how they hate corporate. They used to work for corporate and they've worked for 14 different corporates before they started their own. And somewhere along the line, I'm like, 14? Like, at what point did you feel bad about just not taking care of patients and you just continue to jump to the next for a few bucks more? I think, yeah, at some point it's like, yeah, you got to actually practice
Yeah.
caring and take care of people, and you'll land in the right spot. You'll find that job instead of chasing the money that they accuse corporate of being this big bad thing that chases money.
Yeah. How dare you be profit
Anyway,
oriented? I'm going to go be profit oriented.
to know it.
Yeah. It reminds me, actually, that story reminds me of the Ben Affleck quotes, like some movie Bounce. And he says, I kept looking in my rearview mirror and seeing all these car wrecks and thinking, gosh, there's a lot of bad drivers on this road. It's just like, if you've been with 14 practices, there might be a common denominator that involves the doctor here,
Maybe. Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned it earlier about evaluating different opportunities coming out of school and what you were looking for.
Yeah. So like I said before, I'm here to admit that I scrambled and got really lucky finding the practice that I did. But I think that it's the same advice that I give people who are applying to dental school or applying to orthodontic residency. It's like, check out everything and kick the tires. Don't just apply to a million things and not vet them or not take each and every one seriously. Most people, I would say, are probably shopping location specific. What I would say is, if you're not shopping location specific, you need to get with Kelly and right now and go make more than $500,000 in your first year as an orthodontist, and go move out to the middle of the sticks and cash in on just how much money there is to be made in more rural areas of America.
Sure.
But you're probably location specific, right? You're probably looking for, we want to be here, or I want to live there. And that's fine. But there, at any given moment, orthodontics is a marketplace. There's going to be something somewhere around there for you, and you have to find it, which can be hard outside of corporate, outside of companies that have an HR department. It can be hard to send a guy a letter, hey, can I come work for you? Are you looking for an associate at all? But I would say you have to. All of the residents that I graduated alongside that were really motivated towards getting to a particular area that might have felt saturated were just on the phone every day. They were writing letters. It's like, just don't take no for an answer, in the sense of finding out. If you're madly in love with an orthodontist or their treatment philosophy or something like that, you need to get in touch with them and figure out who's hiring in their wheelhouse, who like them is going to hire soon. Is it them? That'd be great. But if they know somebody, because I think it's all about networking, and I think the neighborhood is smaller than you realize. It can feel really big, and you go to AAO and you're like, oh yeah, totally. I've seen that guy, or like, oh, I went to Tweed with that guy, or oh, that guy's a smile doctor, so it ends up
totally. That's what I found. In orthodontics, it's like 1 or 2 degrees of separation.
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody knows.
So I think it's about networking, and I don't think it's that hard to network, but I think that, the number one piece of advice is look at every opportunity. Don't reject the idea of going corporate. But I would say don't reject the idea of being a partner. Don't reject the idea of hanging a shingle and doing your thing. But whatever you do, buy in. And don't play the victim when you get there. Like, hey, you made a big choice. Now you need to do it full send.
Totally agree. Let's see. So we've made a lot of changes. Even in the time since you've been here, we're always changing and implementing bonus structures, implementing all sorts of things. What can we do more to attract people just like you? We would love to have so many orthodontists just like you, Matt.
I think that it's hard for me to come in on a non-doctor day. It's hard for me to come in on a Saturday or even a Friday. I'm off on Fridays. I shouldn't even say that, but I'm off on Friday. It's hard for me to come in on a Friday because I'm not being paid, right? I'm not being paid for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to call that general dentist and discuss that nightmare case. And I'm not going to, it's not going to be one of my doctor days. It's not going to be one of my per diem days. And, I think that there is obviously going to be tension anytime there's an employer or an employment structure based on how many days I actually go to the office or am paid to go to the office versus how many days I need to go to the office. And that comes back to that kind of extreme ownership thing. It's sort of like, obviously the expectation of me is that I act like I own the place. And I think that I've always gotten the best results when I just put my boots on and act like that guy, act like I own it. But on the other hand, it's hard to act like an owner when you're compensated for X number of days per month. And then you feel like, well, I got to do some clean checks on Saturday morning, but I can do those from home over coffee. Like, should I be paid for that? And it's like, I'm the one deciding to do my own clean checks. So I think that the interesting stretch there is how do we make a location specific associate like me, where I'm the only provider in this location, but I am only an associate, feel compensated for growth. Right. And we're lucky to have people like David Nolan and really clever people who are good with Excel spreadsheets and things like that, looking at all those things, because even as that structure has changed over the last year, I've just been like, I think it's crazy. I'm going to say this, and this is me shouting out Smile Doctors really hard. I negotiated a per diem 17 months ago and started, and my per diem has been increased beyond what I negotiated, because Smile Doctors as a company looked at that and said, no, it's not enough. That's not enough. Like, when's the last time your employer looked at your paycheck and said, no, hang on, you worked harder than that, right? So I think that is just, that's nuts to me, that this company is like, no, hang on to him because he's growing and he's proving what he's worth, and that we're not going to wait around for contract renegotiation. We're not going to wait for Dr. Roche to come over and say, hey, what's going on here? Practice sure seems to be making more money than I am. We're just going to go ahead and adjust your per diem to make this feel a little more fair. And it didn't require me squeaking. It didn't require any kind of anything. It was just a voluntary move on the part of the company. Like, no, we got to do better than this in terms of the bonus structure. So it's really 100%. Fun to watch Smile Doctors try to create a better paved road for a young associate.
Definitely. I mean, it only makes sense. I think when people forget, and they like to call corporate or Smile Doctors, whatever it is, this faceless corporation. Really, my job is to represent all partners. And so looking at it, if I'm wearing that hat and I'm looking at Matt Roche killing it, doing such a great job, as partners, we want more of you. And so absolutely, are we going to make it worth your while? Yes. And we want that. We want to retain you. We want you to have equity and grow and be financially rewarded for all of your efforts, short-term and long-term. So it only makes sense.
Keep it coming. That's all I'm going to say. Keep it coming.
Great. Tell us, while you're spewing words of wisdom, what other advice would you have for any associate, for any employer, anything about associates coming out of school?
I like to quote the titles of books because I don't read the insides. So Extreme Ownership is a big one for me, right? Like, I've heard it's good. I should probably read it, but I kind of imagine what's inside there. So like out in front of this practice, when I arrived, there are 3 huge planters, like 2 feet by 2 feet. They're made of concrete. They're very hard to move. When I got here, they were filled with sand and cigarette butts. So it's like, is it even legal to smoke a cigarette on the front porch of an orthodontic practice in my state? Why are there so many cigarette butts in here? With a couple of straw wrappers. And so I'm ashamed at how long it took me, but Lowe's is pretty close. And I went out there and bought some potting soil and some petunias. And I planted flowers. And you should have seen the looks on the faces of the clinicians the first time we forgot to empty the trash over lunch. And so it was getting too full in the afternoon. And it's that like 3:30 rush. Every clinician is busy, but for just a half second, I'm not lit up. And I just went over and tied off that trash bag, took it outside, put a new trash bag in the trash can. And wow, Dr. Roche, you're taking the trash out? It's like, yeah, believe it or not, I know how to take trash out too, not just root canals and fillings and braces. So it's funny to think like, okay, this is something anybody can do. And I do enjoy the ability to delegate just about anything that I don't want to do to somebody else. But on the other hand, who wants to take the trash out, and who's available right now? What free pair of hands can pick up a bucket and start getting water out of this boat, I think it's mostly about, like I said, acting like you own the place. because I think that there's an anticipation that the more you act like you own the place, the more pushback you're going to get from this corporate Goliath, this phantom menace. Like, hey, what are you doing out there, kid? We didn't say you could do that. And instead, it's just sort of like, yeah, that was a great idea. Like those flowers are beautiful. And sure beats the heck out of cigarette butts. So I don't mean to brag on myself too much, but
Absolutely.
I think that's been kind of like the mentality that I've tried to adopt. Those are sort of metaphors for anything that you can do to kind of act like you own the place. That's been very helpful.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, oh my goodness. I knew we'd have a good time on this. I've been laughing the entire podcast. You're so entertaining, so charismatic. And I see the one thing I want to really highlight is when you came in with a team who's highly experienced and did such a great job. They wanted a doctor they could believe in, trust, and feel safe with, and help grow. And that's what you did. You did that on your first, you called it your first talk with them, talking about how you wanted to make it safe. You wanted that trust in the environment. And then you demonstrated along the way of taking trash out, taking care of problems that need to be taken care of without being asked, just seeing them. And I can only imagine the trust and camaraderie that you have within that team. And that's why you guys are killing it. And that's a secret to building a business. And dentists notice. Patients notice. They tell their friends. It's how things grow. So I commend you. Excellent job. I know you say you only read the titles of these books. I doubt that. You implement way too many of these techniques that you've picked up along the way. And so it's why you're so successful, why you're loved, and why you're an awesome partner. I appreciate you, Matt. And thank you for being a part of Smile Doctors.
Thank you very much, Scott.